The new Modi cabinet sticks to status quo when it comes to the top 4 posts. Amit Shah retains Home Ministry, Rajnath retains Defence, Nirmala Sitharaman continues as Finance Minister, while S. Jaishankar continues as External Affairs Minister. Former BJP Chief Minister Shivraj Chauhan and Manohar Lal Khattar are also inducted in the cabinet. Shivraj is the new Agriculture Minister, while Khattar gets the power portfolio. BJP President JP Nadda is the new Health Minister. The new NDA cabinet meets for the first time and expands the affordable housing scheme, approves financial assistance to construct 3 crore houses in urban and rural India. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq close at record highs led by the continuing rally in Nvidia. The US Fed meet will also get underway today with a status quo policy decision expected on Wednesday. Stocks in the Asia Pacific trade mixed, while the GIFT Nifty is suggesting a higher start for the Indian market. Crude prices surge. Brent rises above $81 a barrel on expectations of an impending supply deficit. Gold prices remain range-bound around $2,300 an ounce ahead of the Fed's policy decision. Apple reveals a major shift towards AI, announces a series of generative AI products at its annual developer conference. Features introduced include Siri with integrated ChatGPT and a new update for its Vision Pro virtual reality headset. Ex-CEO Elon Musk, however, lashes out at the OpenAI-Apple partnership, says the threat to data security will make him ban iPhones at his companies. Good morning in the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra and you're watching Power Breakfast. Those are the top headlines and quite a handful of them that we have to discuss in greater detail. But first up, as always, let's take a look at the Asian markets. Well, most of them are seeing some gains today, but if we look at the Hang Seng, which is opening after a break, that one is down around 205 points right now. The Taiwanese index also has come back to trade after a day's holiday. That one is doing well. It's up around 0.4% right now. The KOSPI is higher. We have the Nikkei, which is higher. So largely higher on the Asian markets, barring something like a Hang Seng, which is seeing some declines right now. Even Shanghai is seeing some declines. This market also opens after that holiday that we saw yesterday. But GIFT Nifty, that will come up for you on the screen, and that one is indicating that the start for our own markets could be in the green today. We did see a lot of volatility yesterday, but it ended in the red, and today it looks like it could start in the green, but we'll have to see which way things go from there. But in the US markets, Wall Street ended Monday's trading session higher. The Dow added 69 points, the S&P 500 gained around 13 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq added nearly 69 points. In fact, CNBC's Bertha Coombs gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets up across the major indexes Monday as the S&P and Nasdaq again closed at fresh record highs ahead of the Federal Reserve's rate decision due on Wednesday. The Dow added 69 points. The S&P 500 was up 14, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 59 points. Apple today unveiling Apple Intelligence, its AI software that will integrate OpenAI's ChatGPT. The company also announcing upgrades to its device operating systems. Among the new features, you'll also be able to tap phones in order to pay each other, a watch app to track vital signs as well as your workout intensity, and AirPods will be able to reject or accept phone calls with just a shake or nod of the head. Meantime, Southwest Airlines is facing a challenge after activist firm Elliott Investment Management disclosed an almost $2 billion stake in the company and said that it is looking to replace the CEO and chairman with outside candidates. According to FactSet, the stake makes Elliott one of the airline's biggest investors. Southwest wrote in a statement that its board is confident in the current management's ability to execute on its strategic plan. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back over to you in Mumbai.
Okay, all right. That's the U.S. market action. But the big cue from Wall Street will be the Federal Reserve interest rate decision that is due on Wednesday. Let's hear out some market experts and economists and listen in to what they think the Fed's next move could be.
I think we're at full employment. The unemployment rate is notched higher here over the past year at 4%. That's consistent with a full employment economy. And I think inflation properly measured is at target. At the harmonized inflation measure, excluding owner's equivalent rent, and we can talk about that if you'd like, has been at 2% now for 12 months. So it feels like to me they've achieved their objectives. And if you've done that, then you have to ask yourself the question, well, why do we need such a high rate, 5.5% rate? And, you know, I agree with the folks that say that the kind of the equilibrium rate, that rate, which is consistent with policy neither supporting or restraining growth, is higher than it has been historically for a bunch of reasons. But it's not 5.5%. And as long as the Fed keeps its foot on the neck of the economy, it runs the risk of breaking something. And again, why? You've hit your objectives.
If we look at the data last week, and non-farm specifically, it was good to keep the Fed on pause a little bit longer than maybe people were expecting, but not so good that we extrapolate that necessarily into 2025. So we still see December as a likely outcome, at least on the asset management side. And I think what we're going to see is as long as the hard data remains okay, the Fed will just wait to see that inflation picture come down, and it has the firepower and ballast that if it needs to move more quickly, it can do. We'll have to watch the inflation numbers come out on Wednesday. We'll have to understand what that means in terms of the forward look. But at this point, it feels like the Fed is fairly anchored. And I think the market is just embedding that into their assumptions as we go through the rest of the year.
Okay, all right. European equities were under pressure on Monday following French President Emmanuel Macron's snap election call. The French CAC slipped 1.5% to a 3-month low. The German DAX lost 62 points and the British FTSE closed with losses of about 17 points. Shares of French lenders like BNP Paribas and Crédit Agricole traded with steep losses. The French 10-year hit the highest in more than 6 months. Meanwhile, the euro fell to a 1-month low against the US dollar due to a fresh political uncertainty in the region. Okay, it's time to move on to the big national update. A day after taking oath for his third consecutive term, Prime Minister Narendra Modi allocates portfolios to his 71 Council of Ministers. The top 3 ministries remain unchanged, but there are some new faces as well. Parikshit Luthra is joining us with more details on the cabinet portfolios. Parikshit.
Well, the big news coming in, of course, about Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister. She's retaining her portfolio both for finance and Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Shivraj Singh Chauhan is a notable and significant inclusion into the cabinet. He gets Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Ministry of Rural Development. Remember, the push for farmers and the rural sector is going to be big going forward. Nirmala Sitharaman, of course, has task cut out for the budget, which is expected to be delivered on the 8th of July, according to certain reports. Jagat Prakash Nadda, he will be the new health minister. Nitin Gadkari, Amit Shah and Rajnath Singh, they really continue with their portfolios. You've got a new power minister because R.K. Singh had lost his election, and that will be Manohar Lal Khattar taking over the crucial Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Ministry of Power. In the Petroleum Ministry, there is again continuity with Hardeep Singh Puri. Commerce Ministry, Piyush Goyal, where you need continuity because India is in the midst of talks for a lot of FTAs with the United Kingdom, with the European Union. So all those will continue now as it is. H.D. Kumaraswamy, he will be the new Minister for Heavy Industries and Minister of Steel. He's the JDU leader from Karnataka and the BJP ally. Rajiv Lalan Singh, he is the Minister for Panchayati Raj and Minister for Fisheries. So really the government, in terms of the 30 cabinet ministers, focusing on a lot of continuity. There were also ministers who were holding 2 or 3 very important portfolios. They have been given only 1 each this time, and the other ministries have been distributed. So clearly the government's focus seems to be on continuity, on experience, and also accommodating key allies such as the JDU with a cabinet berth, TDP with a cabinet berth as well, and also bringing in some new faces and giving the charge, for example, to Kiran Rijiju of Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, which is going to be very important because they have to hold discussions and have consensus on key bills in the Parliament. Ashwini Vaishnav also retains the crucial Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and Ministry of Railways, something that he was holding earlier. He also gets a Ministry for Information and Broadcasting. Jyotiraditya Scindia, he used to be the Aviation Minister, and he's now the Minister for Communications and Telecom, and also for the Donner region or Department of Northeast region also. So that is the cabinet formation, and all eyes now on ministers taking charge and starting work on the 100 days agenda.
Okay, all right. So it's going to be busy next 100 days. And of course, the big budget is something we'll be waiting for as well. Thank you, Parikshit, for joining us with all those details. So that's the new cabinet. And the new cabinet has decided to make their first mark in housing. Sources now confirm that an additional of 3 crore houses will be provided assistance in its construction. Sapna is joining us now to fill in with all the details.
Well, as has been indicated earlier and reported by us, the cabinet did give its nod to the construction of 3 crore additional houses, basically, however, covering both rural and urban. What we had been given to understand earlier was that probably the additional 2 crore houses that had to be built were only for Pradhan Mantri, Awas Yojana Gramin. But as the government statement reflects after the cabinet meeting, the houses have to be constructed and 3 crore of them additional, both for urban and rural. So that's where the matter rests. We still don't know what the breakup would be like. Though, of course, as the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in the interim budget had made it very clear, and I just mentioned that over the next 5 odd years, 2 crore additional rural houses will have to be constructed. So that's where the matter rests as of now. If you look at the budget-wise, there is absolutely no constraint. However, additional monies may be required simply because the eligibility, more and more families are eligible under both the schemes, urban as well as rural. So we'll have to wait and watch and see what the exact details are like. Additional funds may be required, and that will be done at the centre's end. I'm pretty sure of that. It's a centrally sponsored scheme, so it's a 60-40 spend share as far as states and centre is concerned. Of course, 90-10 for northeastern states and the hill states. The 45,000 crores is already this year's budget for rural housing, and somewhere around 20,000 crores for urban housing.
Sapna, thank you so much for joining us with all those details. As the new government comes to power, what are companies in the Indian ecosystem expecting? How are they reacting in this new environment? Mahindra Group CEO and MD Anish Shah says manufacturing, women-led development, farm prosperity and sustainability is on the top of the industry wish list. While Ajit Gulabchand, chairman of HCC, is of the opinion that continuity of some cabinets equates to stability. Let's listen in.
Focus on manufacturing in terms of lowering the cost of business, as I said earlier, improving the ease of business. Focus on more aspects around farm prosperity, and this is when we come back to rural. I think there's a transformative change required in terms of how do we have the entire process from farm to fork streamlined, how do we have cold chain storages as part of it, how do we reduce the wastage that we see in food. I think that is a transformation waiting to happen. Thinking about women-led development, that's one area, I know Shireen is close to your heart as well, is something that's very important for us as a country. And the fourth area I'd look at is sustainability.
Well, it's good that there is a continuity, first of government itself. This is the third term, which rarely happens, which is a good thing. Now, as far as keeping the same ministers, has an important signal that the stability of the policies will remain, and as was an indication given by the Prime Minister through the campaign, that they're going to come out with more stronger reforms to make India prosperous. He has made a goal, by 47 we should be a developed country. If that is to happen, he has to create many more reforms that will change the environment and create a serious climate of investment, innovation, etc. So I think it augurs well that he keeps the continuity of these people. Most of them have done their job well.
Okay, that's the corporate opinion coming in. Time for a short break now. We'll tell you how all these global and domestic cues will impact our own markets in our Power Prep segment. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and now we have our research team joining in to tell you what the trade setup looks like, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and the action from the F&O space as well. Hey guys, a very good morning to all of you. I'll come across to you first up. What is the market setup looking like today?
Morning, Sonal, and it was a pretty average, underwhelming day, if I can call it that, considering the last week full of adrenaline rush that we had. But the Nifty, as the setup suggests, is that the benchmark higher levels. It made a new high yesterday. The Nifty crossed 23,400 on an intraday basis, but failed to sustain above that, ended 150 points lower from those levels, and even closed 23,300. So now that becomes the first level to cross for the index before it can retest its previous record, which is 23,400, which it made yesterday. The Nifty Bank also faced similar resistance above the levels of 50,000. It closed below that level. So keep an eye out on the Nifty Bank as well, and that level of 50,000 where it is facing some resistance. The mid cap index also ended flat yesterday, but the outperformance though came from the small cap index, and that was the one that ended with gains of over 1% in yesterday's trading session, even as the rest of the indices ended flat. To keep an eye out on the VIX as well, and as most of the market participants were suggesting, after the election event is out of the way, the VIX will start cooling off, and that has almost halved now from the highs that it made of around 31. It's now back to around 16 is the VIX. So we'll see if there is a further cool off there as well. The sectors that did well though yesterday, pharma, PSU banks were outperformers, real estate was an outperformer yesterday, and we had mentioned yesterday to watch out for IT considering the outperformance that it saw last week, and that was the biggest sectoral laggard in yesterday's session, with most of the stocks ending lower, putting pressure, seeing profit booking after the jobs data that came out from the US. It is a day of block deals. We saw one yesterday in Emphasis. That continues today as well. IRB Infra, Indigo, Honasa will see block deals. The US markets ended mostly in the positive side. The S&P 500, Nasdaq made a record high. FOMC meeting begins today. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a flat start for our own markets. Back to you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Hormaz. Average adrenal rush. I think we have to deal with everything equally, right? But thank you so much for all those cues. Now over to Vamakshi. She will list out all the stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Vamakshi?
Well, good morning, Sonal. Let me first start off with IRB Infra. This counter will be in focus because sources suggest that Sintra, who holds nearly 25% stake in the company as at the end of Q4, is likely to sell 5% stake in the company. The deal price is expected to be between 63 per share to 70.16 per share, and the deal size is expected to be around 1,900 crores at the lower end. Indigo also on our radar. Sources again suggest that Bhatia family unit Interglobe Enterprises is likely to sell nearly 2% stake in company via block deals. The block deal could be worth 3,300 crores, and the base price is expected to be at 4,266 per share. RVNL, Siemens RVNL Consortium gets an LOA for Bangalore Metro Rail Corp project worth almost 394 crores, and additionally RVNL has emerged as the lowest bidder for a central railway project worth 139 crores. JBM Auto, the arm, had signed an MOU with MUON India, which is a Macquarie Group company, to deploy over 2,000 e-buses. In the past, they managed to deliver 43 out of those buses as on June 10th. NLC India is expected to raise foreign currency up to 600 million via ECBs, and they will be investing it around 995 crores in ARM NLC India Renewables. Vodafone Idea will be considering issuance of preferential shares on June 13th to vendors. Jubilant Foodworks, Domino's Pizza has crossed the 2,000 store mark in India, and it is the first QSR in India to achieve this milestone, and the company says that they're expecting to add 180 stores of Domino's in the current financial year. KIOCL is also on our radar. They've halted operations of pellet plant unit in Mangalore due to ongoing downward trend in pellet market. And lastly, let's also focus in on PTC Industries. They've joined an SPV as a part of government's Make in India drive for defense as well as the aerospace sector.
Okay, that's a long list, but thank you so much, Amakshi, for getting us up to speed with that. Finally, let me go across to Mangalam. He's joining in with all the cues from the FNO space. Hey, Mangalam.
Good morning. So we're back to regular programming as far as the markets are concerned. So we saw, a range-bound move in yesterday's trading session after hitting a record high of around 23,412 yesterday. The Nifty tested lows of 23,227 as well. So it was meandering in this 200-point band itself. The reason why it failed to sustain at highs, the first reason was the IT index coming off. Not so good news coming in terms of jobs data led the IT stocks lower by almost 2% for the index, and the Nifty Bank failing to sustain above that 50,000 mark. We've been talking about the psychological importance of closing above 50,000, and that's exactly what played out yesterday as well. Though there was no concerns as far as the flows are concerned, both FIIs and DIIs bought in the cash market, net flows of over 5,200 crores, and the FII covering of shorts continues in index futures as well. 3,000 crore worth purchase yesterday, with 16,000 long contracts being added and nearly 32,000 short contracts being covered as well. So as a result of which, in just the last 5 sessions, FII longs have doubled in terms of exposure from 17% to 34%, still net short, but the net short has come down from 3 lakh contracts to about 1,43,000 contracts itself. It's a Tuesday, which means it's also Fin Nifty weekly options expiry. But the option writers on the Nifty are writing the 23,400 and 23,500 calls. And also at the lower level, we are seeing the 23,300 put being written. So if you look at all the premiums and open interest out there, in simple terms, it expects that option writers are playing for a range of 23,100 at the lower level to around 23,550 at the upper level itself. Importantly, cement stocks are in focus. We are seeing a lot of long positions being added on Ramco Cements, but yesterday India Cements entered the F&O ban, as we had pointed out earlier as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Mangalam, Hormaz and Vamakshi for joining us and prepping us up for this trading day ahead. Time for a short break now, but before that, let's listen into what Morgan Stanley's Rhythm Desai had to say on FIIs in the Indian market, fiscal consolidation and investing opportunities.
Every single day, the domestic investor is putting money to work. So where's the space for the foreign investor to buy? Because in the market, you need one seller and one buyer. So I think the seller will emerge now, which is the corporate issuer. So corporates will start raising money, and that is how foreigners will get space to buy. So if you ask me for a prediction, which I'll make, I think in the next 6 months, foreign buying will return into India. In the US, demographics started reversing in the start of the millennium. And the baby boomers started retiring and they started withdrawing. That's not happening in India for the next 15, 20, 30 years. So we could have a very long change. And on other areas like infrastructure build, like energy transition, like manufacturing, I think it will accelerate further. We have so much more road to travel on this. It's domestic cyclicals. I think the private banks look good. The consumption stocks across the spectrum look good. And wherever there is any room for valuation, just, that should be a great area to be. I think industrials look good. You have to be a bit selective because the valuations may be elevated in some places.
Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast, and shares of Apple came under pressure after the company unveiled its new AI system upgrade called Apple Intelligence during its Worldwide Developers Conference. CNBC's Steve Kovac filed this report.
Before today, Apple was behind on AI, and now it has caught up. Apple showing off a slew of AI features now integrated across its operating systems for iPhone, iPad, and Mac at its annual WWDC event. In typical Apple marketing fashion, not calling it artificial intelligence, but Apple Intelligence. Here are some of the highlights of what was shown. There's deeper voice controls for apps. That means you can tell your apps what to do in natural language. Right now, it only works with Apple's apps, but it's also going to let third parties tap into the intelligence system. Then the OpenAI partnership, ChatGPT, will be an optional feature. Siri will prompt you if it thinks ChatGPT can provide an answer for you. You can also use it instead of the ChatGPT app, and you don't need to make an account. And on the privacy front, this is the biggest difference between other AI visions out there. Lots of tasks are going to be handled on device, and others will go to the cloud, which Apple says will be done privately. Plus, there's some fun stuff like image and emoji creators. But that's just scratching the surface of everything Apple announced. But the key takeaway here is these are largely catch-up features that we've already seen rivals like Microsoft do with its AI Copilot Assistant, or Samsung put in its smartphones. But what you really need to know, Apple Intelligence will only be available on new Mac models and the iPhone 15 Pro or later. If folks find these features compelling enough, then this could spur more iPhone upgrades, because at the end of the day, that's what matters most for Apple.
Okay, all right. In fact, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has threatened to ban Apple devices from his companies after Apple announced a partnership with OpenAI. Musk called the software integration between the two companies as an unacceptable security violation. Okay, all right, we'll get you more details on this developing story, but let's move on and talk about the commodity markets. Manisha Gupta is joining us as always with all the update from the commodity space. Hi, Manisha. Good morning.
Morning, Sonal. Thank you for that. Well, I'll start with the Brent crude prices, which have seen 2.5% of gains overnight, and this is after constant 3 weeks of losses that this week has started on a positive note. Well, the markets have been under pressure after OPEC and allies have said that they will unwind the production cuts and also increase production from October 2025. But at this point in time, it is about the U.S. summer season demand, which is supporting the U.S. crude purchase for its petroleum reserve, especially with the WTI trading around $79 also is a possibility. There's a Goldman Sachs report, which says that in the third quarter, the global markets could see a deficit in crude by 1.3 million barrels per day. So various factors really which seem to be supporting the prices right now. What the street, though, will watch out now is the two-day FOMC meeting, which begins today, the U.S. inflation data that comes in tomorrow, and of course the OPEC and the IEA are going to release their monthly report today. So that would tell you on where the near-term prices could really move as.
Oh, yes. So a lot of data, a lot of events we'll be watching out for. Thank you so much, Manisha, for joining us as always. And with that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. But do stay tuned. Bazaar Morning Call comes up next.